Hello everybody. In our very first episode of Talking Pictures, we looked at some ship portraits by one of New Zealand's most well-known maritime artists, Captain Thomas Robertson. We have plenty more illustrations of ships in our collection, and I've been putting some of them under the curatorial microscope to see what stories lurk within. This one has never been much on my radar, and I didn't know much about it except that it shows the Deborah, the ship chartered by Frederick Tuckett in 1844 when he was appointed to go in search of a suitable spot for the settlement that would later be known as Dunedin. What I've now found is that the painting's only a copy. It was copied from an original that belonged to the descendants of Captain Thomas Wing, who was the master of the Deborah. In the early 1930s, the Otago Early Settlers Association tried to buy the original painting, but the family wouldn't sell it. Instead, they gave permission for this copy to be made. It was produced by Montague Russell of the Bay of Islands. There's a similar story behind this painting of the Bosworth rounding Cape Horn in a gale. It's a copy of an original work by a member of a family of British maritime artists, the Tudgay family. The original was exhibited at the 1865 New Zealand exhibition in Dunedin by Thomas Turnbull, who'd been captain of the Bosworth. Following Captain Turnbull's death in 1887, the original painting was handed down to his family. The copy was made in 1912 by George Isles for his father William, who had come to Otago on the Bosworth in 1860. William Child Isles was born in England in 1836. He served as a clerk in the British Army during the Crimean War. In late 1859, still only in his early 20s, he sailed for New Zealand, arriving at Port Chalmers in January 1860. He got married in 1868, but the following year his wife died in childbirth. Married again in 1873, he and his second wife Margaret produced a large family, although not all would survive to adulthood. Next, we have two almost identical images of the James Nichol Fleming, at least one of which originally belonged to a former captain of the ship. They were both painted in the late 1870s by Frederick Tudgay. The James Nichol Fleming made 12 voyages to Dunedin, 9 from Glasgow and 3 from London. It was a fast ship. Only 2 of the 12 trips took longer than 90 days, and one, the 5th in 1873, was completed in an astonishing 69.5 days land to land. Captain Peter Logan had been in command of the James Nichol Fleming on its first 5 voyages to Dunedin. Left fatherless at an early age, Peter Logan went to sea when he was just 11. He had made several voyages to New Zealand as master of the Robert Henderson and then the William Davy before taking charge of the James Nichol Fleming, and he later became shore superintendent for the Albion Shipping Company. He passed away in Port Chalmers in 1883. Captain Logan never married and didn't have any children, but he had several sisters who did. At some point, he gave one of his nephews, John Peter Logan Ferguson, a painting of the James Nichol Fleming. The painting was displayed in 1923 at a reunion of passengers from the 1873 voyage, and was presented to the museum in 1949. The James Nichol Fleming had been named after a director of the Bank of Glasgow, but when the bank failed in 1878 and James Nichol Fleming ended up in prison, the name was changed to Napier, which was the name under which it made its last 2 voyages to New Zealand in 1879 and 1881. The Jessie Redman made 23 voyages to New Zealand, 16 of them to Port Chalmers. Matthew Gibson was in command of the Jessie Redman on 11 of the 23 sailings to New Zealand. Matthew Gibson was born on the Isle of Arran in Scotland in 1852. He served his apprenticeship with Captain Peter Logan, the owner of our previous painting, and was steadily promoted until receiving command of the Jessie Redmond. He married Marion Cochrane of Dunedin in 1881. His last voyage between Port Chalmers and the UK on the Jessie Redmond was in 1890. Then switching sail for steam, he joined Burrell & Co. of Glasgow, who ran a large fleet of steamships. He died of fever while in command of a steamer heading from Manila to Singapore in 1894. The painting, which is by British ship portrait painter William Ball Spencer, was donated to the museum by his widow in 1935. Captain Gibson had outlived the Jessie Redmond by about a year. Late in 1892, while on its way to Port Chalmers under the command of Captain Burton, the ship encountered a field of icebergs and was forced to sail between them for over 200 kilometres. 50 large bergs were counted, along with several smaller ones. Shortly after clearing the ice, a gale struck, shredding sails and inflicting other damage on the vessel. The Jessie Redmond survived the battering, but in 1893, returning to the UK with a load of wool, the ship ran aground on the Chatham Islands. While Chatham Island residents managed to salvage all the cargo, and no lives were lost, the ship became a total wreck. And that's it for this episode. See you next time, and thanks for watching.